This is the Open University.
Open University. Not the Open University. Not the Open University. Not the real Open University.
Welcome back to the Open University, where I'm sweltering in Paris, where it's about 40 degrees centigrade, thinking back to my past and everywhere I have ever lived. It's interesting to me. I hope it's interesting to you. I don't know. This is my first residence, which I don't remember at all. I was born in the town of Paisley in early 1960 and whisked almost immediately afterwards to Crown Gardens, where my parents had a basement flat at number 2 Crown Gardens in, I think it's the, is it the Hill Head area of Glasgow? A slightly dingy basement flat, I would imagine, having no actual memories of it. Here's a bit of a Google Maps flyover, and although it's sunny in the Google Maps, it's I always think of it as dreich. Actually, Google Street View, it's dreich, as we say in Scotland, dreich, drab, grey, damp. Basement flats are often starter flats, so I guess this was my parents' thing. They'd come from Prestwick, where they'd been brought up in fairly modest circumstances. Well, my dad anyway was brought up on the Mansfield Road in Prestwick, near the sea, near the beach and the golf links. My mother was brought up partly in Prestwick and partly in a place called Blainfield in the Campsie Mountains. So after Crown Gardens, we moved to Auchterarder. My dad got a job at the Perth Academy teaching boys. There they are. They're walking, rather country gents. They're giving themselves air. Me in the pram there. They rented a farmhouse called West Kirkton, which you can see in this satellite picture. It's quite close to Glen Eagles, but there's really not much happening around there, so you're very car dependent. I would imagine my mother was feeling a bit stuck there. And we had a dog called Custer, which my mother more recently told me was an absolutely horrible dog, which had sort of serious injuries to its face or something. and a cat called Suki, who I bonded with. The only thing I'm told happened to me of note in this house was that I tugged an iron off an ironing board by tugging the cord. I managed to make the thing fall on my eye, and it scarred right above the eye, which now is blind. The next place we lived was in Edinburgh in 1963. We moved up to the Old Reekie, the Big Smoke, to the West End, to a very grand flat just down the hill from Charlotte Square, which you can see here. This is all Adam-designed Georgian architecture, which was built as a new town in the early 19th century, but it's not very new at all. Here we see a flyover of the new town coming in from the east. And the houses at the front are very grand, and at the back they're a bit less grand. They don't have the same stone, and but they often have gardens out the back. Here's the castle and a flyover from the castle. So, and also often because they're on slopes, like we were living on Ainsley Place, which you can see just here, with a kind of gorge behind us, the Water of Leith flows through this kind of valley. So that these were great gardens to explore as a kid. They were private gardens, Lord Murray's Pleasure Gardens they were called. You only had access to them if you lived in the neighbourhood in one of these expensive houses, which weren't that expensive at the time. The level of the floors was different. So you'd enter our house when we moved to Ainsley Place. Anyway, you'd enter on the ground floor, and then there was 2 basement levels: the basement and the sub-basement. The sub-basement had access to the garden. But we first moved to 6 Great Stewart Street, which is just round the corner from there, and we lived on the first floor here. On the corner flat, you can see these blanked out windows because there was a window tax imposed, I think, in the late 19th century. Our next door neighbour above us on the top floor was George and Elspeth Davey, who were both writers. George Davey wrote a book called The Democratic Intellect, which is a history of Scotland's attitude to education and intellectual life. And his wife, Elspeth, was actually a very famous writer of short stories mostly, but also novels like Creating a Scene, which is set at the art school in Edinburgh. The Night of the Funny Hats is one of her short story collections. And actually, Ali Smith, to this day, is a great supporter. That window, the bow window, next to Elspeth Davies' flat was Mrs. Dixon, who was this old grand dame of classical music who had a nephew called Malcolm, who was always held up as a model for me. This was Murray Place Gardens, which we had keys to. Again, these are, I think it's criminal actually, these should be public parks, but they're private gardens with railings around them and limited access. You have to live in the neighbourhood. I don't think you can even pay a fee and get access to them. You have to have a house and then you're issued with a key to get into them. I think it's a very awful system. In 1966 we moved just round the corner. It was a growing family. We had 3 children. I was the eldest. My brother Mark was born in 62, my sister Emma in 65. We moved to number 6 Ainsley Place, and next door to it, 7 Ainsley Place, was where I lived later in the early 80s because my dad bought a first floor flat there. But number 6 was the family house on 3 floors, starting from the ground and going down. This is the Water of Leith, which was behind us, and we could come down and play. Although actually, we shouldn't have gone out through the fenced perimeter of the pleasure grounds. I don't know if we even had keys as kids, but you could climb over the wall. And we ran down to Stockbridge and bought little candies and model cars and things. I used to take the bus to school every day from here, from Charlotte Square in front of what used to be St George's Church, but then became West Register House. That's some of the back gardens you can see there, and then that's the front. So we would have parked our, at the time it would have been an Austin Cambridge estate car with a black roof and a red bodywork. It was disgusting. My dad would take that hunting, shooting and fishing because he was into the sportsman life. Later it would be a Rover 3 litre, a black Rover 3 litre, which my dad bought just before he got the job with the British Council, and we moved to Athens in 1969. So here you see these very elegant Bath-like or Edinburgh-like terraces. That's later. My mother lived on that corner there in 18 Murray Place. Before leaving the area, because she now lives up the hill. This was the big change for us. We moved to Athens when my dad got this job with the British Council. And I remember getting off the plane at Hellenikon Airport and just feeling the warmth in the air and just loving the atmosphere, the constant sunshine, the sense of a vibrant Mediterranean culture around me. There's Lycabettus. And for one blissful year, I was sent to the British Embassy School, which was called St Catherine's, and it was in Psychikon, near where we lived. And then I was sent off to boarding school, which was my nemesis, my absolute descent into hell. As you can read in my memoir niche, if you can find a copy anywhere. So here we are heading to the north suburbs of Athens across some of these weird crater-like, they're all mines and things, so these were being dynamited. I would sit in school and hear the explosions up on the hill as they dynamited, I guess, marble quarries behind us on the hill, and it was quite dangerous to walk up there because of, I guess, explosions and rubble and stuff. But here we are. That red roof at the bottom was my old school, St Catherine's, which is now some kind of embassy, like the South African embassy or something, and heavily guarded, like most things in Psychikon. Psychikon now is a bit sad. There's no shops. It's deserted. There are just these avenues and a lot of sentries and guard dogs and security cameras. But back then it was much more lived in. And I was very excited by cars. I watched BMWs and Lancias racing up and down the avenues. Or I'd peep through the hedge at an open-air cinema, which would be showing Zabriskie Point with music by Pink Floyd. I was listening to the Beatles or to Hair a lot. In our house, which is on Narkisou, the road of Narcissus, appropriately enough, here we are in Narkisou, Ikosetria, 23 Narkisou. And it was a groovy time. It was 1970, so I was growing my hair. I was wearing my Oliver Twist trousers from Harrods Weigh-In shop, trying to be fashionable. And I just loved this. And I used to dream when I was banished from this. That was my room at the front, just overlooking the pine tree here. We had a roof terrace as well. We could go up on the roof from the kitchen, up a spiral metal staircase. and look out over the hills, the hills of, I guess, the surrounding mountains. And these weird, jagged Martian landscapes as well would be visible from the balconies. And we had friends, we had bicycles, we were just kids, 10-year-old kid, I was 10. Just a very happy time for me, going down to the Alpha Beta supermarket on the main road and buying Italian fashion magazine, or I think I shoplifted a calendar from an Italian fashion magazine, perhaps it was Grazia, showing midi skirts and things, and I put that up on my wall. Okay, now total culture shock, we're back to England. My dad left the British Council. He had some arguments with his boss, and he didn't want the next posting, which I think was to Hyderabad in India. So he went to run the Colchester English Study Centre, which was a kind of research post or testing ground for English language teaching manuals run by, I think, Oxford University. But we lived in this house in the countryside outside Dedham. He would commute into Colchester each day for that. And I was a boarder by this time in Edinburgh, so I would only come here in the holidays. So this doesn't really feel like my world particularly, this English, Suffolk, Essex border kind of Constable country world. But my family now looks back at this as a kind of idyllic time, I guess because it was our only real country, apart from the farm in Perthshire. It was our only countryside chapter. And Willow House was this huge, still there, it's called the Willows now, this huge property with willow trees around it and a huge field behind. And we had air guns and things. I remember being very heartbroken when I managed to shoot, sort of accidentally, I shot a blackbird or something. And we'd ride around on our bicycles. This was where I got beaten up for wearing my velvet flares by some local fashion policemen, self-appointed 12-year-old kids. This was the time of glam rock, I guess, and we'd go into Colchester and everyone would be wearing tank tops and flares, and there'd be Roxy Music albums in the shop windows, there'd be T-Rex albums. That was the first album I actually bought and owned, was T-Rex Ride a White Swan compilation, Music for Pleasure compilation. There's Willow House. My brother was a bit more rugged and outdoorsy, and he sort of climbed the willow trees, the titular willow tree that the house was named after, and fell out of it. This was really just a nice holiday place to go to. Of course, it was close to London too, so I remember I used to be obsessed with the Times newspaper, just the look of it, the graphic design, the austerity of the Times. So I'd go down to the station and have my copy of the Times and then take the train into London, and I don't know, I have a vague memory of London not seeming that far off. And of course later I ended up in London. Actually, if you listen to recordings of me at this time, not that there are many, but I have this kind of London accent sort of overlaid on the Scottish vowels, which I still had, which I seem to have lost since then. So you can see it's pretty, it's a sort of luxury country life. And so that lasted from 72 till 73, or 71 till 73. And then we got sent to Canada. So that was good news for us, because we were taken out of boarding school in Scotland and sent to the local high schools in Canada. So again, a bit of culture shock, going to live in North America. I'd never been to the US or North America before. Just before leaving Willow House, my dad bought an export Volvo estate, the first of many Volvo estates which he had throughout the rest of his life. The number plate was OGO20L, so it looked like Oh Go to Hell. People would think it was like one of these paid number plates, but it just was fortuitous. Weirdly enough, his previous number plate was TSG666, so it had kind of diabolical implications, whatever car he had. But Canada was a totally different climate. Obviously, a lot of snow in the winter, but even more in those days, and you had to have like chains on your tires. And just a few words about being at boarding school. This is the boarding house that I was in for 3 years, actually, Mackenzie House, which overlooks the playing fields. It's quite close to Ferry Road, Arboretum Road, the Botanical Gardens. It's quite a pleasant part of Edinburgh, but it doesn't hold any pleasant memories for me. There's the Firth of Forth behind it. That's the view you get of Edinburgh, with the silhouette of the castle from the boarding house, which is now just private housing. best pass over that one quickly, I think. Here's Montreal, 1973 till 1975. My dad was teaching at Concordia University, which back then was called Sir George Williams University, downtown. He would take the train in every day, commute in by train. The rest of us lived in this very tree-like, forest-like suburb, which was where Beaconsfield meets Bay d'Orphée. And there was a little town called Sainte-Anne-de-Bellevue just next to our high school, so we could look around that, but there really wasn't much going on. I think there might have been a flea pit cinema. There was an old department store which still had pneumatic rails for the cash to be sent to the cash room, and there was a tennis court, a Thompson Point tennis court where we played tennis. There were neighbours, many of whom were Scots, exiled Scots like we were. We lived next door to the Langs. My sister recently befriended through Facebook Kirsty Lang, who was her age, and they came from Stirling originally, so they still had their Scottish, accents and the way of life. And I guess this, is the fate of Scottish people to live outside Scotland and then to meet other Scots and bond with them. The lake in winter was frozen, so we'd skate on the lake. And our house there had been built by a family called the Bloombergs, who had made this bungalow, which was so well hidden that Street View can hardly see it at all. In fact, I kept getting lost when I was tracking around on Google. It was a good enough house. It had a huge basement, and I used to collect copies of Time magazine, or we'd keep furs, and there was a special fur closet made with cedar wood or something around it, and oil heating, so it stayed fairly warm compared with Scotland. Although it was much colder in winter, you wouldn't feel the cold in quite the same way you would in these very skimpy astral windowed Georgian houses back in Scotland. So and then when you went outside, you'd wear snowsuits, ski suits. There would be drive-in libraries, drive-in supermarkets. There was this huge supermarket called Fairview out by the airport at Dorval, where we went regularly to go shopping, and that was all indoors. Of course, central Montreal, a lot of it's underground because of the harshness of winter, so you do a lot of underground shopping. And there would be, for instance, the American Film Theatre. Films were playing in Dorval at the cinema there, so my mother would take me to see those every, I think, Thursday afternoon. And that's how I saw things like Jacques Brel is alive and well and living in Paris, Mort Schumann's take on Jacques Brel. Or it's how I saw my first Bertolt Brecht play, I think Galileo, which was filmed for the same series. So there was culture. It wasn't totally isolated. And the school advanced me and my brother by, I think, 1 year for me and 2 years for my brother, because we were considered educationally above the age group that the Canadians had reached. And so it was not to fall behind if and when we moved back to Scotland, that we wouldn't be... it was the kind of school where you'd get merit certificates sent out to literally every single student. You have performed well, you scored more than 80% on your grades this year. Here's a merit certificate, which we thought was kind of a hoot, because we were used to an education system which downgraded us and said we were subpar. I was always in the C stream at the Edinburgh Academy. So it was quite it seemed like a worthless monopoly money kind of education system. But it was free, and, it was interesting to get a North American take on life, because this suburbia is very typical North American suburbia. We're pretty close to the US border here. We watched Boston television networks. We watched PBS from Boston or whatever. Watched a cartoon called Hercules, or Gilligan's Island, or the Andy Griffith Show coming home from school. You'd watch all this kind of crap while eating toast, and that was the Lang's house next door to ours, and that's ours, hidden in the trees there. You can just about see my room if you zoom in. Yeah, my room is at the front. So I remember this room like I had a Honda sports car up on the wall. I had a garden spotlight with a green cable, which I thought was the latest in lighting. And did I have a funky yellow desk or something? Possibly. Oh, no, that was maybe later in Edinburgh. When we moved back, because we did move back to Edinburgh, my parents missed it. My dad missed the fishing. My mother missed the sort of Edinburgh social scene, the intellectual and social scene. So we moved back to the new town of Edinburgh, and we got a house, 3-floor house in Drummond Place, along at the east end of the new town in 1975. And my sister has pretty much lived there ever since, although she's now spread out a bit. Now she's with Irvine Welsh. They've got a house in London as well, and a place in Miami they spend a lot of time in. But they still have a flat in Edinburgh, just down the hill from Drummond Place here. And recently our old Drummond Place house went on the market. It was a bit controversial because the lady whose parents bought it after we left decorated it and painted the front door pink, and there was a huge stink with the council about whether you were allowed to have a pink front door in a heritage new town of Edinburgh property, UNESCO protected, blah blah blah. Ridiculous limitations really, but she's really chinsed it up. I saw the property company's video for what she's done with the inside, and it's unrecognizable from when we lived there. In fact, any old house of ours that I check out online to see if it's been sold recently looks so incredibly chintzy and so aesthetically disgusting to me. What we did in those days, moving into a Georgian house in the new town, was first thing you did was sand the floorboards and then buy Japanese paper lanterns, because that was all the rage in the 60s, this very minimal look of, you'd throw down rugs on a sanded floor, you'd have a lot of books, serious Penguin paperbacks, modern classics, whatever. And then, so it had this kind of Japanese look to it, and also very minimalist and austere. Now people just go for this chintzy luxury, pseudo-luxury kind of look. It's really horrific to me. A kind of rock and roll look as well. There's a kind of chintzy rock and roll look. Anyway, I left in 1978, leaving my family there to disintegrate slowly because they divorced. My parents divorced in the early 80s. I went to Aberdeen University, and that was quite fascinating in its way. This was a very remote town in Scotland, pretty northerly. The Northern Lights of Old Aberdeen, where in winter you'd get daylight for only a few hours before the sun just peeked over the horizon and said, no, fuck this, and went back down. And everything's granite, so it looks very different from other Scottish cities. It's very harsh and rather puritanical looking. The old campus for the old university is kind of fascinating though, so I associate this landscape with just, buying a copy of the NME and going to a bench somewhere, reading the NME. Things that were happening in very distant, far-off London seemed kind of exciting. If you go up the high street, all the kind of... The old brewery was where the English department was. I was doing sociology, psychology and English, and specialised in English. It's a 4-year degree you do for your MA in Scotland, so you have a first year, like a foundation year at art school, really just to kind of dabble in everything and see what appeals to you. The sociology department loved my very radical left-wing Frankfurt School-oriented take on things and wanted me to stay, but I didn't. So I lived for the first 3 years, actually, in this kind of weird... missionary station up on a hill, which is the Hillhead Halls of Residence, and you got to university through the Seaton Park, which is a very idyllic park with a walkway down the middle, and you went past the Macher Cathedral, a sort of medieval cathedral, down to the main campus of the university. So it was a kind of satellite university, not in the middle of town, no distractions. I would go down to the library late at night. I still have recurrent dreams about being back at university and leading that student life in a tiny bedroom with an orange bedspread, and being able to go at any hour of night and day to a canteen or a university. It seemed like it was open, probably open, the library was just open till 10 o'clock or something. There's the sea there, the North Sea, and the beach, and rather austere beach as well, not very welcoming. But in my dreams of being back at university, I'm there under false pretenses. I'm an adult, and I've been pretending to be about to do my degree, to sit my final exams, but I'm not actually really going to do them. So it's just a kind of excuse to be there as a permanent student. I think I feel like I'm a student to this day, but that I'm there under false pretenses. That's the Agri building. 70s building where I go sometimes to the lunch place. Well, my first girlfriend's other boyfriend was a student doing forestry, so I guess he would be eating in the same place. That was a bit risky of me. Otherwise, I'd sit in the Taylor building in the sociology department area, reading, either reading like Pinter plays and Beckett plays and things. That's the bridge you can see there. That's the bridge in the Taylor building. Connecting anthropology, sociology to English literature. So it's actually quite a nice physical symbol of, the way I think today. Here we're zooming across the Tay. Is it the Tay? No, not the Tay. The Don River, or the Dee River, the Brig of Dee. And heading out as the crow flies to Gray's School of Art, because the main friends I made in my first few years at university were art students. A bunch of people I met because they came up to the university to investigate getting film equipment and video equipment to make movies. And the Film and Television Society Phoenix, I was a member of that. And I wanted to write movies and direct movies with them. So the two Keiths, Keith Grant and Keith Milne, well, three Keiths, no, the two Keiths, Keith Grant and Keith Milne, they were art students. And then there was this guy, Graham Johnson. They were like music/film enthusiasts who I could, with great gratitude, I could discuss the new Dome album or whatever with them, and they would, or the Fall records or whatever. They would know. They were clued into culture, to the interesting parts of culture, well enough that I could discuss them. Whereas with the other students in the English department, I don't think I could. I don't think they would be listening to the Fall. They weren't cool enough. They would be into, I don't know, Genesis and stuff. Or Blondie was big, or there was a sort of the saccharine end of new wave was something they were into. Or my best friend at university was a guy called Simon, who was a geography student who was into Roxy Music. But I was meanwhile into not just the art school and the art students there, which seemed like an amazing place for self-actualization, because I was very seriously into Eric Fromm and Herbert Marcuse and people like that at Frankfurt School, where it shades off into the psychological area. This is Newton D, actually, where I also went to do voluntary work and also to perform for the people who are Down syndrome people who are living there on a kind of farm in the middle of a forest with this Rudolf Steiner architecture. So this is something I really got into, was anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner's philosophies. This sort of weird mystical alternative lifestyle, which you can pick up some of this still in Germany. There's, I guess, Montessori schools and all the rest of it, or alternative ideas about education or about spirituality, or about how you can fuse spirituality and practical everyday life. So I really started getting into that and reading Ivan Illich and people like that. And this is why one of the reasons I dropped out actually after the third year. I did come back in the mid-80s and finish my degree, doing a final sprint, sitting my final exams, getting a first-class honours degree, which I've never used for anything. But I was so into the radical ideas of, deschooling society and all the rest of it, Ivan Illich, that I thought, this is going nowhere. I need to be creative. I need to become an artist. I don't want to just get stamped, with the approval stamp, which is a degree, and go into the workforce somewhere. Unemployment was a huge thing at the time, so I expected to be unemployed. And the music business was what excited me. Not the business. It was the possibility to be creative in a marginal way, because I kind of wanted to be a writer, but I thought it would be easier to get a record contract and be a writer, a clandestine writer in pop records than to be a published author, because everything I'd read, there was this whole discourse about the literature of exhaustion and how writers, it was almost impossible to write even if you were a published author, and if you weren't, then it was almost impossible to get published. So this was between 78 and 84 basically when I graduated. These rather austere halls of residence. I have some affection, retrospectively for this, because it was a beautiful site overlooking the river. There was a beautiful kind of loneliness. I did lose my virginity and get a girlfriend at this time, so that's also a nice memory. Overcoming this alienation, the physical alienation of not having touched people properly, not sexually touched people. Now they've rebuilt, I think the first house I was in, Esselmont, has been demolished and they've rebuilt some of the houses. But you can still, and I've done this recently, you can stay off term time in these student halls, in the rooms. They become kind of glorified or simplified hotel. More like simplified because it's very austere. But I kind of like small rooms with austerity and kind of monastic feeling. That's the central building just at the top of the picture there, and that's where the buses into town would come and stop at the end of their route. You'd get into the bus, you'd sit in the front at the top or something, and you'd read the music papers or whatever. After that, when I dropped out, in Edinburgh 1981, so Joseph Kay split up, and by some miracle, Malcolm Ross, the guitarist, contacted me and wanted to make a band with me to produce the demos that I'd handed him. So I moved into this little mezzanine flat above my dad's, or below my dad's flat in 7 Ainsley Place. So I was looking out the back, over the back garden where I'd been brought up in the 1960s as a child, and out a bit further over the Firth of Forth, and there was a couple of old sisters, the psychoanalysts actually, well, one of them was a psychoanalyst who lived below in number 7 Ainsley Place there, and we used to rehearse the band just along the road in my dad's language college, the Edinburgh Language Foundation. I then went back for my final year, 1984, 83, 84 I guess, and this time I took a little room in Torry across the docks, very Victorian, harsh, working class neighborhood. So I had literally a shed in someone's back garden. Mrs. Ross on Walker Road let me lodge in her back garden shed, and I can't remember how much I paid for it, but that was I had a picture of Alexander Pope up on the wall, a photocopy of Alexander Pope, and I would be doing Jacques Brel covers and things, making little cassettes of the songs I hoped to make as a solo artist, because the band had already split up by this point. We'd done a record for 4AD, The Man on Newer Street, which hadn't really done anything at all, hadn't got much press attention or sales. So I realized that I had to do something else. So I went back to university and got this degree, this useless degree. Good for my self-esteem, though, to get the best possible degree you could get. And then to be begged by the English department to do postgrad research and to turn them down. Here's me trying to find the shed I actually lived in. It's one of these little back garden sheds on Walker Road. I used to come also to Walker Road because some of my friends were in it was like an informal creative writing group. Angus Dunn and Ian Stephen, who became quite a noted writer, a poet and a novelist actually, used to meet up, and they were Baha'is, so they would do these strange kind of rituals like laying on hands and chanting and singing Baha'i hymns and stuff like that in one of these houses on Walker Road. I think Joy's house. Joy was Angus's girlfriend. Yeah, one of these sheds was, I think it was that one you can see there. So around about this time, I guess, I wasn't really sure if I was going to continue with music, or I think I wanted to be unemployed or wanted to be a gardener, do some kind of manual work that would leave me free to become a writer. And I was keeping these very introspective journals, and but it wasn't unhappy. I remember the Frankie Goes to Hollywood thing happening that spring, the spring of 1984. They suddenly got big, and everyone was wearing fluorescent socks, and the kids in Torry were singing along with Relax. Whatever. Spandau Ballet, I guess, had become big, and the New Romantics were reaping the cash rewards for their stylish rebellion into style. But once I got my degree, there was no reason to stay in Aberdeen. I mean, I got the hell out of there and moved to London, because I had some of my best university friends, actually Babis, it was Greek, had moved to London already. I think he was living in Mecklenburgh Square in the marital accommodation of the London School of Economics. So I'd been down to London and stayed with them. She was French, as girlfriend, and she introduced me to Georges Brassens, and we would go to Italy in the summers together, and so that seemed like a much more cosmopolitan world for me. And Aberdeen was absolutely not. It was a great place to not be distracted and to have access to books for 3-4 years. Go to the other record shop on Union Street and buy the new Eno Cluster collaboration. Buy my Twinings Earl Grey tea bags and Chivas Regal or whatever it's called, Chivas grocery shop on Union Street. Go to the Gay Society's showing of Fellini's Satyricon in some little upstairs room off Union Street. There were things like that which seemed, I suppose, quite miraculous in a city like Aberdeen, because the town gown sort of distinction is very strong there. Or to listen to Iggy Pop's The Idiot, for the first time in the Student Union at School Hill. Or to go for baths at School Hill, and there was some student baths you could use. All these pungent sort of experiences which I could have there, but it wasn't a place where I was going to stay. So I moved to London, and at first in London I was living with Malcolm Ross, the guitarist from Joseph Kay, who with Susan, his wife, they had a flat on Queenstown Road in Battersea. So here we are at the Queenstown Road junction railway station, just a stop or so from Clapham. If you continue down the Queenstown Road, you get to Clapham Common, and so. But you're also quite close to Chelsea. So these were actually the places I ended up living in London. I lived in South London and Streatham for quite a while, and then I moved to Chelsea. So I spent 5 years between 85 and 90 in a little room off the King's Road, and that's where I'm going to stop this one, because if I just keep going on, it'll bore you to tears.
Open University.
Well, there's a strong theatrical flavour to our Desert Island Discs this evening, as our castaways, there are two of them, Raymond Mander and Joe Mitchinson, have built up and look after a huge theatrical collection.